Warning: the following video contains sensitive content regarding child loss and other motherhood topics that is not suitable for children under 18 and may not be suitable for certain audiences. Viewer discretion advised.
All right, welcome back to our podcast, everybody. My name is Briana, and today we are going to be talking about my story. So, I remember back when I was younger, I actually got diagnosed with PCOS. If you don't know what that is polycystic ovarian syndrome. It just leads to infertility, or it's very hard to get pregnant from that. So, I remember the doctors telling me that I would have a very hard time getting pregnant and it might not even be possible for me. So in 2017, I met my best friend, who is now my husband. I remember telling him that I would not possibly never give him kids, and I know that that was something that he really wanted. He came from a big family. I came from a big family, so that's just something that he really desired. And so I had to tell him that that might not be a possibility. And of course, that scared me because I didn't know if that would be something that he might blame me for later on. And so that's something that I laid on the table. And luckily for me, he was okay with that. And he was saying that there's different options. It doesn't have to be natural. We can always adopt or foster in the future. And so I was very thankful for that because my desire as well is to bear children in the future. So we got married in March of 2020 and decided to start our family in December of 2020. And so we kind of went into it thinking that it wasn't going to happen. We already had it in our minds that it might have been hard, it might not be an easy journey, but we were hopeful. And so in January 2021, I was a couple weeks late for my cycle, and so I decided to take a pregnancy test. And sure enough, there was a very faint second line there. And I remember calling my mom and I was crying and I was so excited because I didn't know it was going to happen for me, and especially that soon. So I was really, really excited. And I remember telling him, and he was just, what? Like, we were just really surprised because I remember, I mean, we told each other that it might not be a possibility. So it was really exciting. So I made the call to my doctor and they scheduled me in for my 9-week appointment for my first ultrasound scan. When I went in, I was really excited, ecstatic. I was excited to see a little baby and see a heartbeat, and unfortunately, we didn't quite get that. Um, in the ultrasound, while I was supposed to be 9 weeks along, they actually charted the baby at 6 weeks along. And so the doctor told me that it could be possibly a miscarriage and that they would take my HCG levels just to see if it was going higher or lower. So they did my test draws, and of course, I'm devastated. I'm so sad because this miracle, happened, and it could have it could lead to a miscarriage. So they called me back with my test results and told me that my HCG levels were actually doubling, if not tripling. So everything was fine. The baby was just charting behind a few weeks. So, of course, we were excited again. It was a scary journey, especially I did have some bleeding at that time as well. And so I thought that might have been the start. Um, so 3 weeks later, we went in for what would be the 9 week ultrasound. And so when we went in, sure enough, they saw a heartbeat and a beautiful little baby bean. And we were just overjoyed, so excited. So we didn't see our baby again until 15 weeks along. And we decided to do the 3D ultrasound, and that was the time when you can see everything. Um, and that was the day that we would find out the gender. So going in, my friend was going to have the gender, and we were going to do a gender reveal party. So when they put the camera on my baby, they were wiggling around in there and just having a grand old time, and I just knew that everything was as it should be. And so we had a gender reveal party, and that's when we found out that we were having a girl. And believe it or not, I had a little bit of gender disappointment. I told myself that I was going to be a boy mom and it was just going to be all boys. And so here I am with a girl. I was like, what? But of course, a second later, I was so excited to have a little baby girl, a little mini me. So um, I scheduled my anatomy scan at 20 weeks. And I remember me and my mom went in and they scanned her and they saw that she looked fine. I mean, they didn't say anything at the time, of course, but I remember my mom was telling me that she saw her wiggling around and again having a grand old time in there. So we thought everything was good. And so I remember the doctor never called us after that, and so we just thought that everything was fine. And I didn't get a call or anything, but I did go online to look at the results of the anatomy scan. And I saw on there that there was a possibility that she has a club foot. And so, of course, for me, that sounded very concerning. And so I gave the doctor a call and I asked her what was that all about. And she was saying that. So I called my OB about the club foot and I was asking about it, and she said that no, it could be a big possibility that she was moving around a lot, and that's why the technician probably got some blurry pictures. And so I asked her if it is a club foot, is that something that we should be concerned about? And so she said, well, no, it looks like her other organs are developing properly, so it doesn't seem like anything to be concerned about. However, you can opt in for a second ultrasound if you want to. Well, at the time, because we couldn't afford it, we took her word for it and we just thought, okay, if her organs are developing properly, then it doesn't matter if she has a club foot or not. So we just went on with our pregnancy. I didn't see her again until our 28-week scan. We did another private ultrasound. It was a 3D scan, and we got to see her, and she was so beautiful. We got to see her facial features. She looked a lot like her dad and had some features of me. And I remember the technician took a video of her and she put on the screen, "Hi mom, I'll see you soon." I'll never forget that day. It was really beautiful. It was a very beautiful scan. Um, I didn't see her again until 36 weeks along because I was considered a normal pregnancy. And She was developing normal by the doctor's standards. So at the 30-week scan, she you could tell she had chubby cheeks. um, she was head down, she was ready to go. And so after that, it was that was it for so after the 36-week scan, I didn't see her again until she was born. So I know the doctor had concerns about me possibly developing preeclampsia. I was struggling with some high blood pressure. So because of that, they decided to do an elective induction at 39 weeks. And so we were really excited to be able to see her a week early. Um, I remember checking in to the hospital and we were so excited. Um, we had everything, settled in and we were ready to go. And so the birth was beautiful. Everything was perfect. She had a good heartbeat and um, we started the induction and I was contracting normally and um, it was it was a 10 out of 10 experience. And so she she did everything she was supposed to do. I remember my husband watching the whole thing and he just thought it was the best thing ever seeing his daughter being born. And then she arrived. And so I remember they put her on my chest and she tried to cry, but she turned purple and they noticed quickly and they took her very fast. Um, they placed her on the machine where they weigh the babies. And I remember they were trying to give her some oxygen and stabilize her. Um, she just couldn't breathe. And so I remember when I was watching her, I was so scared. I didn't know what was going on. I thought something was going to happen to her. I actually thought she wasn't going to make it. And I remember crying out to God, please don't take her. Please don't take her. And by the grace of God, they did stabilize her. So after that, the team of doctors that came in, I mean, there was maybe 10 of them that came super fast. Um, they were working on her while my doctor was working on me, trying to, get me to deliver what I needed to and contract my stomach back down, doing what she needed to do to make sure I was okay. And I asked her, I was like, is everything fine? What's going on? And I remember her telling me, oh, sometimes they might struggle to breathe initially because they were just um, in a lot of fluid. And so she was like, everything's fine, it will be fine. And I remember after a little bit, the doctors came up to me and they were saying, there's something wrong with your daughter. They saw that she was only breathing on one side. And um, they also noticed, of course, the cleft foot, and they noticed a couple other things. And so they just said that they were going to transfer her over to Cook's Children because it's nothing that they could do for her. They didn't have they didn't have the resources or equipment to be able to help her. So they put her in an emergency vehicle to transfer her over to Cook's in Fort Worth. Because we tested positive for COVID, we couldn't go with her, me nor my husband, so she went by herself. Um, in that time, I didn't know what to think. I just delivered her, and we thought it was going to be, we thought everything was going to be okay. And she's gone, and we don't know what to think of that. So, my husband was checking in on me, making sure I was okay and everything was fine with me. And my OB couldn't answer what was going on. So, we were in the dark for what felt like forever. It had to have been 2 or 3 hours, maybe. And so, getting wheeled to our to the maternity ward was hard because we didn't have our daughter and we were just alone and it was quiet. And so we finally got the call, and the doctor told us everything that was going on with her. She had a lot going on. She had congenital diaphragmatic hernia, which pushed her lungs so much that one of them hardly even developed and the other one was severely underdeveloped. They also found that her heart was pushed a little bit to the side, and so didn't develop correctly either. She also had what was called an imperforated anus, which means she didn't have one, and that's all they found at the time. And so they gave the options of we can put her on ECMO, but here's what's going to come with that. If we put her on ECMO, then she's on a ventilator. Basically, the machine is keeping her alive. It's pumping the heart for her and it's also breathing for her. Um, she's going to have to go through multiple surgeries, and we don't even know if she's going to survive those surgeries because she's so little. And they asked me, is this something that you're wanting? Do we have your consent to do all of that? And my husband said right away, yes, do whatever you can to save her. But it didn't feel right for me because she was just born not even a couple hours before. So I wanted to do everything to save her, but at the same time, at what expense for her? And she was so little. So I remember telling my husband, I understand where you're coming from and I understand that you want to do anything to save her. But at the same time, she hasn't even been in this world for very long and she's already having to go through all of these surgeries. It was a lot. It was a lot for both of us in such a short time frame. Luckily, the doctor called back not even 30 minutes later. She told us that there's toxins going in her bloodstream because there hasn't been a lot of good circulation. The best option to do is to let her pass away peacefully. And I remember her saying, I know you want to do everything you can to save her, but the best thing to do is for her to pass away peacefully. And I agreed. We agreed. So I didn't know how long she was going to survive. I didn't know what was going to happen to her. And so I wanted to get to her as fast as I could so I could go see her. So I remember calling, my husband called his family and I called mine. I broke the news to them that she was going to pass away. And so luckily, Cooks, they were open and willing to have as many family members that we wanted there. Anybody who could make it there could go and be with her. And I remember telling the nurse that I have to go. I have to go and be with my daughter. And they were hesitant. Her blood pressure is really high. It was at 236 over 206. And I told them I don't care. I have to go be with her. I don't know how long she's going to live. And so they called my OB, and my OB said to let me go. And so I remember my husband going out and coming around the corner and me being wheeled out. And that was so hard because hearing babies crying in the other rooms when I'm going to see mine pass away. We make our way over to Cook's, and I remember walking to the room where she was at, and she was by herself. She had tubes all over her. That was torture to see as her mother. And I didn't know how to help her. There was no way for me to help her. I was very thankful for my family because they all showed up super fast. Within, gosh, 20, 30 minutes, all of our family was there. And so we surrounded her with nothing but love, and my husband got to sing to her, and my dad got to sing to her, and we all got to touch her, hold her, and um, I got to get my skin to skin with her. Um, we were there for, so we got around 5 hours with her, and I had a really hard time seeing her with the tubes on her. And I remember holding her, and I could feel the machine breathing for her, and the machine was beating her heart. It's the only reason why she was alive. And that was hard. So I had to make the tough decision to say goodbye to her. Me and my husband still deal with a lot of guilt for leaving her, but I couldn't see her pass away. We had to make so many choices that night. I I had to make so many choices that night. And how, like, how can you go from being excited that you're gonna have your first baby girl, your first daughter, to her passing away that same night? How does that happen? And so I think I did all I could to try to be there for her. And I couldn't see that. I don't know where I really don't know where I'd be if I had seen her pass away. So I said goodbye to her while she still had her tubes in. And I remember the nurse saying, "Oh, well, you can bathe her. You can bathe her. And we'll take the tubes off and you can change her if you want to." And I couldn't. And I told her, I was like, "I'm sorry, I gotta go." And she was like, "It's okay. I'll do that for you. I'll do that." And I was so thankful to my husband's parents. They came up to me and they were like, "We'll stay with her. You don't have to put that on yourself. We'll do that for you." I'll forever be grateful for that. So, luckily my husband wanted to make sure I was okay. And so he went with me. He wanted to make sure that I was okay first. And that's something that he still struggles with too. Because he wanted to be in both places at once, but he couldn't be. So he had to choose, and that was really hard for him. He feels like as a father, you should protect your child, and he wanted to protect Madeline at that time, but he also knew that I was dealing with high blood pressure and could stroke out at any time, and so he didn't want to lose both of us. So he wanted to make sure that I was okay. And so he went with me. My husband made the suggestion that we go back to the hospital to make sure that I'm okay because of my blood pressure. And so I went back to the hospital, and luckily they took me in right away. They checked my blood pressure, and it hadn't even gone down at all. It was still really high. And back in that room, we were already talking, and we were talking about our lives. And within the hour, Matt's dad messaged and said that she had passed away. And it almost felt I almost felt a relief. Um, which I don't like saying that because, it's hard to hear that it was so hard to hear that she passed away. But at the same time, I also knew she was suffering because she had tubes all over her and she was only not even 13 hours old yet. And she had the tubes, and that was the only thing that was keeping her alive. And so knowing that when they took those tubes off, she couldn't breathe during that time. So I didn't want her to be in pain. I really hope she wasn't in pain. But luckily she was with Matt's parents, my husband's parents. And they gave her nothing but love at that time. My mother-in-law was telling me that my mother-in-law was telling me that she told Maddie that they would take her traveling everywhere. And that when she told her that she smiled. And so I'm glad that they got to share that with her. My mother-in-law couldn't be in there because of all the tubes. All the tubes made her feel very uncomfortable. And so during that time, my mother-in-law wasn't in there while we were all, loving on her and all of that. She couldn't be in there because of the tubes. So giving her that moment where she was without the tubes, I'll always be grateful for too. So she lasted about 30 minutes without the tubes. So we got the call that she passed away. And I felt a sense of relief knowing that she wasn't hurting anymore. My OB prescribed me some sleeping medicine to basically, she knew that I needed to sleep. I needed to um, just try to not think about it too much. So I was I was hurting so bad that the OB knew and my blood pressure wasn't going down at all. And so because of that, she prescribed me with some sleeping medicine to help me sleep. And that was the only thing that could make the pain go away at the time was those sleeping pills. And I actually almost got addicted to it. I think I took them a little bit too much, but um I didn't know how else to make the pain go away. It hurt so bad. So bad. Um I remember me and my husband were just laying there in the bed. It was quiet. It was so quiet. And for hours, we just talked. We talked about our life. We talked about um what it will look like. It's not going to be the same. I was so scared of how we were going to cope with it. Um I think the thing that I didn't want was for us to drift apart or to blame each other or to um go through a divorce. Because you kind of hear that with some stories. And I asked him, how do we go about this? How do we go through this journey together? And so I think we needed that time to be in that stillness because we just talked and we were able to express how we were feeling and how we were going to move forward with it. I remember um it was it was hard, but we've never been closer at the same time. And our it's so weird to think about it because one of those you think about like is there anything that can make you feel good when you're feeling this way? And the nurse came in and asked us if we wanted some snacks, and we asked for peanut butter and graham crackers, and for some reason that made us feel really good in a moment of pure sadness. And so we'll never forget that. We still do that together sometimes. We'll just sit together and have that snack, and it'll bring back these memories of when we were able to sit and talk about our life after this. So we decided to make God our foundation. In the thick of it, in the thick of everything that was happening, my husband was saying things to help me through it. And then when he was struggling, I was saying things to help him push forward. And so we did a whole lot of that. And it did help with the following trials that would come in the future. I think we realized that working as a team in the grief is so much better than trying to process it alone. And so we almost overly communicated every little thing. Following morning, um, I was so scared to go home. I didn't want to go home because everything was prepared for her arrival. We had her nursery ready. We had everything out in the living room in our room just to make sure that we were ready for her. My in-laws came to pick me and my husband up, and they took us to their house. Um, I wasn't ready to go back home because of everything that was laid out. And it felt like there was someone squeezing my heart and wouldn't let go. The pain was really unbearable at the time, and it wouldn't go away. I felt so lonely. I felt like I lost a part of me, a big part of me. And I couldn't, like, I really didn't know how to move forward. Even after that long talk with my husband, I was like, she's not here. And so, how do you move forward with that? Um, Someone that you wanted to nurture and love, and you were so ready for them. And within the span of a day, they're gone, and what do you do? So, I was hurting so bad. And I just wanted it to stop. And it was one time, I'll never forget it. I was sleeping. It was the following night. It was the second night, and I couldn't sleep. And I wanted to give up. I wanted to end it all. And I had my sleeping pills. But then I knew that the people I would hurt, knowing that they're already hurting about Madelyn, it was not okay. And so I knew that something had to give. And so I took to Facebook and I joined all the groups of people who have also lost a child. And I messaged so many people to try to get someone to just talk to someone who's gone through it so I'm not feeling so alone. And for some reason, that helped. It helped to see other moms who have gone through the child loss and that unbearable pain. And I got connected with a group of women and who had also lost their children around the same time. And so we were all going through the heavy grief of just losing a child. And that helped a lot. Um, of course, you have your faith and you have your religion. And that's also something that helped me out as well. But I think I needed something tangible, something that I could, where they can actually like physically respond and something that I could see um, to help me through it a little bit. So that helped me to move forward, even though it was hard. There were still things that I was struggling with, the heavy grief and emotions that I was feeling. But there was a lot of instances of people that were coming into my life that was telling me things that I needed to hear alongside the Bible studies and stuff that I would do um, to help me through this journey. This is a it's a hard journey to go through alone, and you don't have to go through it alone. And I personally couldn't do it alone. And I yes, I had my husband, but having an outlet outside of your husband, even outside of your religion, is definitely something that helps out as well. So after Madeline, our biggest question was what happened to her? How did this happen? And I remember when we asked the doctor who was in care of her, I asked her, how did this happen? We had no idea. And she told us that typically when a child has a club foot, that is an indicator that there's more going on. And so she had a genetic disorder. They don't know what it is, but they suggest that you get an autopsy on her and visit a genetic counselor. And so we did. So the autopsy reported that she had a congenital diaphragmatic hernia. She had heart defects. One lung was hardly developed, the other one was severely underdeveloped. She was missing an ovary. Her urinary tract was narrow, and she had cloudy corneas and a perforated anus. And so I remember the genetic counselor telling us that they haven't seen a case that extreme at their facility. So they think that it could possibly be a very rare genetic disorder. And so they ended up doing a full genetic panel on her, which tested 1,000 of her genes. And they also tested her chromosomes to see if anything was mutated or missing. And so that came back as normal. So she had her 23 chromosomes, they were all perfectly fine. And her gene panel came back completely normal too. So they ruled it as something that just happened. It was, um, I remember the genetic counselor saying that typically this would have led to a miscarriage, but somehow she made it full term. So I hold on to that as she was so strong and wanted nothing more than to meet her family. They also said that there might be a possibility of it being something called friend syndrome, which, if that was the case, there would be a 25% chance of it happening again. That was before they did the gene panel. And so when that came back normal, she actually ended up rolling that out. But that put a lot of fear in my heart for trying again. So, in my mind, I'm thinking that what if this does happen again? Can I go through another pregnancy with a child who possibly has the same thing? So, although that scared me, me and my husband decided that we really wanted children, and so we decided to try again. Unfortunately, we did go through two additional miscarriages um, that were pretty early on. One was a miscarriage, and the other one was a very early chemical pregnancy. And so at that point, we thought that it would just never happen for us. So luckily, our my primary care physician did not want to give up on me, and she referred me to a fertility doctor. So that fertility doctor also was very hopeful that it would pan out. And so they were wanting to track my pregnancy. So they wanted to jumpstart my cycle, do the ovulation, and all of the things. However, at that point, I was so mentally and emotionally exhausted that I just wasn't ready. And so we were going to wait. Well, after her first birthday, I found out I was pregnant. And so I called my fertility doctor, and luckily he jumped right on the bandwagon of it possibly being a progesterone issue, which is progesterone is one of the key hormones that is needed to sustain a pregnancy. So they checked my progesterone. It should be 20 plus milliliters, and it was only one. So I assumed that I would just go through another miscarriage, but he was like, wait, don't count yourself out yet. And he got me on progesterone right away, and I was taking it 3 times a day, and it panned out. So, um, I was really nervous. However, I was very hopeful and excited that maybe this is the one. So, we did find out we were having a little boy, and we were considered high risk. And luckily, our I did go with a new OB, and this one was very attentive to my feelings, to my emotions, definitely listened and understood that I needed all of these extra scans and I needed the just the peace of mind that everything would be okay. And so um, I did end up getting weekly scans that turned into 2 times weekly, um, closer to my due date. And so for me, my worry stemmed from just how is he doing developmentally. I um, was, even though they were telling me that he is a healthy little boy, everything is developing fine. They showed me everything. They detailed every little part of his body on the ultrasound and showed me exactly what it was and that everything looks good and as it should be. I still had it in the back of my mind that something could possibly happen, but um we finally reached to his induction day. Going into that hospital room, I was very sad and nervous and so scared. I was so afraid that something was going to happen again and that he would come out um, also struggling to breathe. I hadn't experienced having a child come out screaming or, um, so it was scary to go through that process. And unfortunately, the induction didn't work, so I had to go in for an emergency C-section. And it was 5 minutes before I heard his scream, and it was the most beautiful and relieving sound I've ever heard in my life. And seeing him was healing. It was. And he's not, I know he's not Madelyn, and I know, um, it's two different babies, but my mama heart needed that. um, it was it was a blessing for sure, and I'll never forget it. And I remember being wheeled back into my suite and my mom and my aunt seeing him and seeing me hold him, and they were crying because it was also healing for them to see that too, because that's something that we had prayed for a very long time. So um it was truly amazing and something that our whole family needed, and it was like a breath of fresh air. um and he was fine, everything was good. He's a nice healthy 8 pounds 6 ounces. He was born on June 24th, 2023. Over time, which again you hear the quote, time heals all. But over time it does get a little easier to hold the grief in your heart. And your life really does just go around that grief. So I realized that you can still enjoy life, and it's okay to enjoy life. I think for a while I was struggling to enjoy things because I felt like I was letting my daughter down because she's not here to enjoy that with me. I realized that she's she wouldn't want me to be upset or sad or feeling this way. So, and there was ways that we still celebrated her. We found ways to to do things as though she was still with us, even though she's with us in our hearts. Um, Things such as um, taking photos with her little hippo that she has, and it's a little hippo that has her heartbeat. Um, we also celebrate her birthday every year. We make sure to have a cake. Our family comes and celebrates. I'm so thankful for my family to continue to talk about her and celebrate her on her birthday. That's been a big deal for both me and Matt. And, at the end of the day, I know that it's not just us that was suffering that loss. It was also, she was also a niece and a great granddaughter, and she was a daughter and a granddaughter and a cousin. And so there was many people who were grieving her too. And so they also love on her during her birthdays. So that's been a tradition of ours, is to make sure that we um, celebrate her. She was born on September 22nd, 2021, and she passed away September 23rd, 2021. To my dearest daughter, Madelyn, words cannot express how much mommy and daddy miss you. We will never be able to understand why you had to leave us so soon, but we wouldn't trade meeting you for the world.